2025 is almost here, or how I like to call it, yet another unwanted sequel to 2020. I can only hope that 2025 will be better than the last few years, mainly because hoping against hope is the only thing we really can do at this point. As for the topic of this video, let me explain. I'm what you call a career substitute teacher. I come in whenever and wherever there is an opening for a school around me. Obviously, the people I fill in for vary from I'm just sick this day and don't want to spread it to I'm either undergoing surgery or going on maternity leave, please fill in for me. There are plenty of stupid things that have been said to me in these, shall we say, interesting settings. Now, let's establish a few ground rules first. All these words, the Greek alphabet brain rot such as alpha, beta, sigma, gamma, whatever's in now, Ohio, Riz, Rizzler, Baka, all these words are forbidden because they have been said to me so many times that they have just blended into hot chocolate soup. Obviously, I'm also changing a bunch of names as well, protecting the schools and the students. Let's get started, shall we? Number 1, the hiragana katakana incident. Basically, as a person with a Chinese and Vietnamese last name, some kids came up to me and asked, what does whatever mean? That being a string of hiragana or katakana because apparently they can't tell the difference between Japanese and Chinese. Okay, you people watch way too much anime. I would hope you know at least there is some difference. I told him that was Japanese, and I didn't say I couldn't read the characters even though, let's be real, people who grew up speaking the language tend not to end up reading the characters. Then another kid went up to the first kid and said, I told you so, he's not that kind of teacher. Not what kind of teacher? Well, I didn't ask because I didn't want to press the situation further. So now for number 2, the please don't use that word in my class incidents. Basically, I was subbing for a Spanish teacher for 2 days, and one of the exercises in that class is that each kid, there were only like 14 students in this particular class, would read a sentence that they had written last night, and the rest of the class would have to transcribe it. They were learning the preterite and imperfect tenses of Spanish verbs. One of the girls said something to the effect of Los Romanos cogieron Jerusalem en siglo I. Then there was a great deal of Spanish-speaking students and people who actually knew what cohere meant in that classroom reel back in pain and shock because you don't use the word cohere. They also laughed. You don't use the word cohere in Latin America. It means to fuck. So I had to tell this poor girl, kid, for future reference, cohere is a swear word in Latin America, so don't use it on this side of the planet. Also, Jerusalem in Spanish is Jerusalén. But the class clown had to say, well, I wouldn't call her sentence inaccurate. And to be fair to the class clown, in the 1st century AD, the Romans did take Jerusalem, but the Romans also fucked Jerusalem, given that they did burn down the entire city in 70 AD. Number 3, the theater kids are shocked. I'm cheating with this one because I'm the one who said it. So, this was a high school and a higher level theater class, and I had to basically rush in because I was called in like the middle of the morning because the teacher suddenly had to leave for whatever reason. The students had the bright idea of faking a fight using stage combat. This is theater, after all. While they didn't use swords and such like the image suggests, they did get on the stage, not off the stage, and use their fists in order to fake a fight with the rest of the class playing along with it. So I sit there, start calling attendance, and the students are all baffled as to why I'm not trying to break up the fight. Then I started going full internet critic mode, because when they were doing the stage fighting, they were just throwing punches, and whenever you throw a punch during a stage fight, you don't actually hit the other person. If you do, you lightly tap them at best, but most people just don't hit at all. So when the punch makes contact, they actually have to make a sound. So what most theater kids would do is that they would slap the sides of their stomach or their hips with their free hand in order to cause an illusion. Obviously, their free hand would be positioned away from the audience so that the audience doesn't notice in order to keep the illusion up. So I said, "Hey genius, when you are faking a fight meant for the audience of the teacher, don't make your sound effects obvious." Also, another thing I criticize them for is that besides making it obvious, they also weren't choreographing it that well, because none of them were actually getting tired or actually felt like they were sustaining bruising from like an actual fight. So everyone was sort of shocked that I actually knew what they were doing. Also, they were kind of shocked that I actually said I was a theater kid when I was their age because they thought I was just hanging out with the math Olympiad and the chemistry Olympiad people. And I'm like, really? All that over the shape of my eyes? Really? That's what you thought I was doing? Number 4. It's on the instructions. Kids are in the classroom working on a project they've been working on for the entire month. One student asked, "When is this project due?" Obviously, the substitute teacher, who's only been there for a day and only has the substitute plans right in front of him, does not know when this is due. So I just said, go check on the learning management system. I think it was Schoology for this school, but I'm not too sure. Don't know if it was. Maybe it was something else. Kid goes on the computer and says he can't find the due date. So here comes the frustrating part. I have the kid open the project prompt, and there it is, the due date, and it gives the actual date. And because this teacher wanted to make it absolutely clear when this stuff was due, the teacher decided to bold, italicize, and underline the due date and put it in size 20 font. Also, this was an AP English Language and Composition class. Not sure why they were doing projects, considering AP curriculum tends to be very tightly packed, but they were doing projects. I sort of expected them to be able to read, because that sort of goes with the whole English Language and Composition thing. Number 5. The Blue's Clues controversy. This one is a rather simple and stupid one. Kids were arguing over whether Blue's Clues, the dog, was male or female. Of course, this was also my first day of teaching any high school. So, of course, I said Blue was a girl and she was called she multiple times, and even called that in the intro of the reboot/sequel. So the kid who was arguing that Blue was male immediately declared Blue went woke. I'm so glad that was the most painful period of the day. I needed wine. Also, it was an APUSH class. Number 5. Took you long enough. Basically, it was another Spanish class. What had basically happened is that I was filling in for an AP Spanish class, and there was this one girl who was just frustrated because the assignments involved a lot of listening and a lot of reading and writing, and she just couldn't get it. One of the arrogant clowns in the class proceeds to make fun of her by saying, "LOL, she can't speak or write in the language after 4 years of studying it." So another boy in the class, who I'm representing as Kyotaro because they have similar haircuts, says, "So it took you 18 years to speak and write in Spanish, and it took her 4. She's already beating you." And this quiet kid in class basically forces everyone to gasp, and everyone starts laughing. That was totally deserved, I say. Number 6, mRNA. So I was a long-term substitute for biology, and one of the things that came up was in that vaccine, mRNA, specifically the ins and outs of transcription and translation. Oh boy, I had a Karen come into the biology classroom going, "How dare you teach government propaganda to my children? Who do you think you are?" And when I explained, "Ma'am, mRNA is in transcription and translation. There are multiple components to this, but mRNA is, and then before I actually explain what mRNA does and how it relates to tRNA and rRNA, this Karen goes, there is no nucleic acid in the body except DNA. Did you go to school? I don't get paid enough for this shit. Number 7. I learned this against my will. So apparently in America there is this massive debate over whether or not raw milk is great and healthy and that pasteurized milk is somehow evil. It turns out, me explaining the process of pasteurization and how it's meant to increase shelf life by damaging the enzymes through heat denaturation, well, that ruffled some feathers. I got another Karen. This time the Karen was a student, and goes on about how Louis Pasteur is a fraud, and how raw milk is the future, and how there's this conspiracy to make us all, shall I say, R-worded, and how Pasteur was a Jew. Somehow every conspiracy theory ends up going back to anti-Semitism. Anyways, you get the idea. Wrote my report, sent it off to the dean, let the dean handle that because I can't give detentions in that school. Number 8. The test stupidity. I got to make a test on photosynthesis and cellular respiration. By the way, this is the last time I'm ever doing them as a combined big unit test. That was a big mistake. Whenever I deal with students who leave questions blank, I draw a red circle or a red line over wherever the blank was in order to mark it as it was left blank. But every so often, some idiot swears up and down that they totally made the right choice and totally filled in the free response. To that I say, dude, pencil marks are over the red line I made. Who are you trying to fool? Yes. This happened to me multiple times. Thrice. That's a nice number, but thrice is way too much. Number 9. We are a homework-free household. Homework is a pain. Some people just throw it in the trash. Some teachers have also decided to throw it in the trash because homework is painful to grade as well. It makes more work for us. But with that said, homework in my class consisted of worksheets that students simply did not complete in class, meaning that the volume of work is actually lighter than, per se, a math class. And it's sort of on the students because this is the consequences of their actions, given that students who spend all of their time screwing around on their laptops, or in the case of honors biology, procrastinating on their Spanish or their math classes. You can tell, this is sort of a self-inflicted wound. Sometimes it can't be helped, sometimes these students burn through the worksheet faster than I can actually give them work for. But you see, it's one thing if a student tells me I don't believe in homework because, okay, I can just give you whatever you earned. Homework is for completion in this class, so I can just say how many items you didn't do and just simply remove that amount of points. But it's another thing when a parent comes forth and says, we are a no homework household. I'm sorry. Who is the parent here? You're the one who's trying to enforce rules, right? Why are you asserting that this is a no homework household, as if that means anything to me? Okay, you can be a no homework household as much as you want. It doesn't stop me from enforcing the syllabus that says here's the homework policy. Number 10. My taxes/tuition money pays your salary. You idiot sandwiches. My salary isn't dependent on your garbage opinions on why your son should get an A because he barely showed up this quarter and barely turned anything in. I did what was my job description. I taught the standards. I made the lesson plans. I assessed the students. I offered help. You, however, rather your child, did not do their end of the commission, so they will get what they earned. Also, I am not paid to fudge results. That is a separate fee, and my fee for fudging results tends to bankrupt basically everyone. Unless you idiots can get me crowned as Emperor of the Romans by the Pope, crown, pomp, and circumstance and all, don't even try to bribe me. That is the second time the Romans came up in this video, and I did not expect it. So, what can I say about this whole experience? Are we going to die in nuclear hellfire because the next generation grows up so stupid that they end up sitting on the nuclear button? Well, no. The idiot sandwiches tend to be in the minority of things. My issue here is at the managerial level of when it comes to education, from the highest levels in the Department of Education and universities, to the absolute idiocy that happens at the lower levels of education, such as what happened during the shooting of Abby Zwerner. Okay, I think my biggest area of concern will always be the parents. The idiocy at the Department of Education level, that is going to take forever to fix, but what can be fixed immediately is when it comes to the parents. The parents come off as, how shall I say it? Really sus. Some honestly come off as well-intentioned, but not knowing how to parent and are second-guessing their every second move, which I can deal with. That's a bit easier to put up with than what's next. Then Mr. and Mrs. Turner from Fairly Odd Parents. And honestly, some of these kids probably need fairy godparents because their parents are absolute morons. There is this growing sentiment I've seen, which probably did happen when I was a child, but it's either more prominent now because the internet has made it more prominent, or because I started teaching and that's how it became prominent, where parents hold the sentiment from arrival to departure. Whatever happens on school campus stays on school campus. From the homework example I gave you earlier to the, okay, whatever my child did, whatever my child said, that is your problem. That is school's issue. It's like they have no sense of shame that their child flipped people off for no reason and punched people, according to my colleagues. Sometimes it's even worse. Sometimes they destroy bathrooms and get bills for the property damage, such as breaking a mirror. Those things are freaking expensive. Schools are not outsourcing firms for parenting. I know it takes a village to raise a child, but we have a lot of children in this village. I will be lucky if I get a school that has a single-digit student-to-teacher ratio, but in other schools, I have to deal with 30 kids per class, and I have to deal with all of their needs. And your child being disruptive, that's an insult to them, because that's less attention I can give them to actually educate them and get through all the standards I'm supposed to get through. I always love it when people accuse me and my profession of indoctrinating students into being woke, when in reality, if we could indoctrinate students, we would totally indoctrinate them to get to bed on time, brush their teeth, wash their clothes, bathe regularly, wear deodorant, say please and thank you, follow directions on the page as they are written, and overall, just all the little things that would make getting through standards, such as, transcription and translation, so much easier. Well, you came here for the stupid things said in my class, you stayed for the rant about the future of our children. Those are just my thoughts on the matter. Please consider liking, subscribing, tipping the channel on Ko-fi. This is Cyril signing off.